A warm welcome to our Tech Talk number 4. We've been counting and we're super excited to keep on exploring the intersection of technology and the future of work. And what we've done so far is look into the topics of AI, the hybrid workplace during the pandemic. So how can technology help us, take care of our well-being and our productivity during COVID times? And then also, how can we use workplace data to create a better workplace? What we're doing today is taking a look into the future and really exploring what the next generation workplace will look like. As there are a few new people joining today, I will go through, the technical setup of everything. So as I said, most of you are muted when you are joining. So later when we open the Q&A discussion, don't forget to unmute yourself. During our guest's speech, I'd like you to maybe stay on mute so there is no distraction sound-wise. If there's any questions that are directly linked to you understanding the content, please drop them in the chat. I will pick them up and direct them at Mark. And otherwise, I invite you guys to later unmute yourselves, come on camera and talk to our speaker. So I've now mentioned him passively a few times. I'm so happy that we are joined by Mark Needham today. He's a true expert of technology and also the impact it has, its transformative impact on organizations. So Mark, maybe you want to say a few words and then I give the stage to you.
Sure, thank you very much. Well, thank you for inviting me today. So I'm Mark Needham. I'm the EMEAR Hybrid Workplace Leader for the EMEAR collaboration team. So what that means is, even though I work within the sales team, I don't actually own accounts. I'm focused on strategy, go-to-market, how we bring together the different players in the giant matrix that is Cisco to allow us to be a successful organization when it comes to our performance. I've been at Cisco about 6.5 years. And my background's all kind of software, technology, and how we can bring them all together to realize the outcomes different organizations, either our own or those we're working with, can help them hit the outcomes they're looking for. So that's me.
Great. People are still joining, but I would say let's get it started. It's 10:05. And let's dive into the topic of the future workplace.
Thank you very much. So, and if people actually want to ask questions live, I totally don't mind them coming off mute and just stopping me when I'm mid-flow. So please feel free to kind of jump in, ask anything else, points of clarification, or if you're more comfortable, just put them in the chat and then Isabel will pick them up and let me know. So we're going to talk today about how we're going to explore the workplace of the future. And there's really kind of 6 things I kind of structured the content around. We're going to talk a little bit about something called Aramas Law, because I think it's quite interesting given the context of the last 18 months. We're going to look a little bit at some of the trends, some of the data points of what we've been seeing at a macro level. I'd probably say Cisco is the most mature hybrid working culture globally. But that being said, we're still learning. So I'm going to share a bit about our learnings over the last 18 months, what our view is on what a next gen workplace is, the likely impacts you can see on your business and the opportunity that will present to all of you. So this is where we're going to start. So we're going to talk a bit about Aramas Law. So Roy Amara was the president of the Institute of the Future in the 1960s. And this statement is from the 60s, but it's still very relevant today. And this is that we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. So this is his kind of official model. So we see in blue how humans think in a linear fashion about the progression of technology, moving obviously left to right. And if we go back to 1994, we can see an initial overestimation, which kind of led up to the kind of dot-com bubble and the dot-com crash. And then as you look across the longer term, we're seeing an underestimation regarding how humans feel about the kind of future and the kind of technology. Now, I've brought this up because I'd actually think we need to challenge this. So this is a very valid piece of research, but it is from the 60s. And I think if you look at what's happened over the last couple of months, last 18 months, sorry, I think we really need to butcher this diagram. So apologies if it looks a little bit off, because this is my DIY butchering of this model. But really how I think things have progressed is if you go back about 7, 8 years, there's an explosion of AI, kind of cloud computing. So the technological productivity really started ramping up back then, and kept going. And I think where humans would traditionally think in a linear fashion, I think the shock to the system in the last 18 months has led them to what I'm going to call the realization stage, where you can see their thinking of the future kicking up and becoming more closely aligned to technological productivity. So people have learned and experienced for the first time in many cases remote work, hybrid work, how they've been able to do every single facet of their job from a different location to the desk they've been sat at for 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, for however many years since they've been in the workplace. So I really think it's an interesting time where what's possible and what people are looking for is much, much closer together. We're going to talk about that. Now, the challenge, and this is some information from Shaker Academy, is that 2/3 of companies are lacking a detailed plan for how they're going to handle this hybrid work future. So 70% have no plan, or they haven't even communicated it yet. So clearly, as depending where you are in the world, what part of Europe you're in, some the economies are opening up, some of the restrictions may be easing. So it's getting quite late now to be defining these plans. Where this impacts the employees is that more than half are feeling concern or anxiety because of their employers' lack of clear vision. They're worried about, well, what is going back to work going to be like? I quite like working this way. Oh, I'd quite like to keep this bit of my current working processes, but I missed that bit. Maybe can we bring them together? And I have all these questions, and they're looking for leadership and clarity, and especially in this time of increased awareness around mental and physical well-being, this clearly can't continue. So people need to start making their kind of position in the ground. This is our vision. This is what we're going to do, and they obviously need to bring the employees on that journey. So if you go to the Slido now, if it's got a quick poll, you can either scan the QR code, you can go to slido.com and put in the meeting number. And really, I'd just like to get a sentiment from the attendees on what was your first hybrid working experience like? And why people connecting there? I'll share mine. My first hybrid work experience was terrible. So my first taste of hybrid working was 10 years ago. All I was given was a BlackBerry. I felt really disengaged. I felt distanced from my colleagues, and that occasion didn't really work out for me. But the last 6.5 years since I've been working at Cisco, there's no way I could ever go back to working in a more traditional fashion. There we go. Flexible, great, good, confusing, discovering. Discovering's a good phrase. Whoever put that one in. I think you need to find your own natural rhythm. Loved it. On that one, I could never go back to a 9 to 5, 5 days a week ever again. So hopefully every company in the world are going to get on board with this. The worst experience, that was mine. Mine was 10 years ago rather than in the most recent period, but we can discuss some of those elements. Cool. So in many cases, too many meetings, good adventure, loved it. Challenging for others, yes, interesting. So some experience of enjoying the flexibility, but some challenges on the way. So obviously for hybrid work to be really successful, you need to mitigate the challenges alongside the good things. Cool. So the reason why this is so important is that companies that can offer a flexible work arrangement in a way that is effective are going to have the best chance of attracting top talent at the best price. So globally, there is a massive shortage of IP, of really leading high quality candidates for all the vacancies that are out there. And what we're seeing now is this concept of the Great Resignation. So I took this article was on the BBC website. I understand it's been all around the world. But really what they're seeing is that over the last 18 months, people were rightly concerned, a little bit uncertain about work and what's going on and how's my company doing and all those kind of things. But they're at a stage now where they're like, okay, economies are open up again, feeling quite positive about what's going to happen next. And now that people, when they're going back to their old working fashions, where employers haven't adaptive and not trying to offer the flexibility that the employees are looking for, what do? They're resigning. They're finding a company which will allow them to work in the fashion they want. And if you're going to lose high performers in your organization because of this, clearly it puts massive risks on the organization. So decisions need to be made about, well, are we going to embrace it? Yes or no? If we're not going to embrace it, are we happy to accept the risk which lands on our organization, that the chances are most of your best people are going to leave to go and work for somebody that is going to allow them to work in this more modern fashion? So I did some Googling around to find some articles about people's experiences. And Microsoft put this article out at the beginning of September. And on many levels, this article confuses me. But the key thing, the reason I'm sharing this is because they're a tech company, they're a large tech company, and they've come out publicly and said they were less productive and less innovative working in a hybrid fashion. They went on to say that their workers spent less time interacting in real time, less audio calls, less video calls, less real-time interactions, and instead just relied on email, which to me sounds crazy, but it is what it is. So what I was interested, maybe you guys can help me understand that data point. What would make you spend less time interacting in real time when you're at work? Fed up with meetings. Interesting. I'm going to, you could click nonsense meetings. Yeah, that was kind of going to be the point I was going to elaborate on the first one, kind of meetings for the sake of it, rather than meetings which are either just cultural, having a chat. So definitely seen that. Too many meetings, too many meetings, too many meetings. Interesting. And by that, I'm assuming people talking about a scheduled meeting. We're going to have a half an hour call at 9 o'clock, then we're going to have another call at 11 o'clock, then another call at 12, when actually the business doesn't actually need to have meetings like that. Focus time, yeah. Lack of purpose, that's a really important one. So we talk a bit about kind of well-being, and how you can drive purpose in your focus. We talk about that today as well. Overwhelmed. So a consistent trend, people feeling there in meetings. And I think when we talk about hybrid work and we talk about people needing to do every aspect of their role from any location, I think what you're seeing there is that meetings is only one aspect of doing your role. Is the need to do ideation, brainstorming. You're going to be working on documents together. You're going to be having asynchronous. You're going to be having, oh, I've got a quick question, and just click to call somebody to get an answer on something. So there's lots of things there. Immersive video conferencing. You must not have Cisco. On task focus. Cool. So I'm going to move on for that. But yeah, really interesting insights. Thank you for that. So I've mentioned in my introduction, I'd probably say that Cisco have probably the most mature hybrid working culture in the world. And our experience during the pandemic has been the exact opposite of what Microsoft has seen. We've been more productive. We've seen greater innovation. We've driven more inclusivity than in the past. And the way we've done that is we've looked at our people, we've looked at our processes, and we've looked at the technology and perfectly blended them together, which has led to incredible hybrid working results. So I've highlighted 10 things, but there's far more than what I'm going to share here. So in the last 12 months, working in this fashion, this is some of the things that have been happening within Cisco. We've completed 14 acquisitions, 25,000 new patents. I've asterisked that because it seems like such a big number. I'd like to get it double, treble, quadrupled confirmed. However way, even if it's half of that, it's a giant number. We've launched 23 new major products. We've set up 80,000 home offices. We've done 270 return to offices. We've hired more than 2,000 people. We are named by Gartner the best supply chain in the world, which is clearly a business advantage, a competitive advantage with what's happening regarding the semiconductor shortages and things such as that. We launched 70 pandemic support projects in 10 days across 25 countries. And we brought together an entire organization to define our net zero plan and announced it and launched it to the markets, which is net zero by 2040. So this is just some examples. And clearly, we've been busy, we've been doing things. I think it's also important to call out that the employees have also been part of this journey. In 2019, 2020, we were named World's Great Place to Work, #1 Great Place to Work. I believe the 2021 one is due before Christmas, so hopefully we get the hat trick. So we know it works for the people, we know it works for us organizationally. So why do I think we've kind of made this a success? So I really think this sums it up for me. So I think you're always going to have head down solo tasks you need to do. And actually moving forwards, you're going to do those at home. There's no point in going into the office to do solo work. The only reason people are going into the office is for that richest level of social collaboration. And I think at the heart of everybody in our organization, the focus on real-time collaboration, even in a hybrid working motion, is critically important. Everyone's always on video. Even your ad hoc calls is a quick video call. There is actually less scheduled meeting, I found, than previously. And every meeting now has an agenda. We don't seem to have meetings for the sake of meetings. It's more about related to projects and driving things forward. So I think we've done a really good job on making this a success for us. And in fact, our CEO said to the street, we are going to have no mass return to office at Cisco, or Cisco are not going to push a return to office. It's down to the individuals and the teams to choose how they want to work. If they want to go into an office 5 days a week, that's fine. If they want to stay at home 5 days a week, that's fine. The realistic answer is it'll be somewhere between the two. You do some work at home, some in the office, and some in between. Now, we are slightly advantageous in our approach in that we've worked in a hybrid fashion for more than 10 years. So what I've got on this slide are pre-pandemic data points. So even before COVID landed, 9% of our workforce worked in a fully remote manner. Why is that? Because we were focused on getting the best people into the organization, regardless of where they resided. If they were not near an office, or for whatever reason they couldn't travel to an office, it doesn't matter. If they're the right person, we wanted to bring them in. 80% of the 80,000 people worked from home at least once a week. Half our managers or employees are in different cities, and half of our teams work across different time zones, and 61% would be viewed as not needing to go into an office. So we did have a head start, but that said, we still learned a lot over the last 18 months, and you can only maintain this kind of leadership when it comes to constant evolution and trying new things. So what are our leading insights that we've learned being an already very mature hybrid working organization over the last 18 months? And I'm sharing these in the hope that they will help you skip some steps in your own plans and maybe present some ideas to you. So the first one is the interconnection between technology and culture. Technology drives workplace culture, and workplace culture drives the technology that you need within the organization. So we clearly, as a tech company, we always understood and appreciated the value of the technology that we had, but it became a priceless commodity to our business continuity. Always real time. Every call's a video call, even if it's a one-to-one. I want to speak to Isabel, give me a call. I need to speak to you about something. Exactly how it works. The second element is this concept of a conscious culture. So we spent lots of time in training on helping the teams become more self-aware about how people are feeling, about what's going on in the wider world, about what may be impacting their teams and how they can help them maximize their performance. Everybody at every level in the organization was given greater accountability, greater empowerment, and expected to act against our cultural values. And clearly we have to communicate those. So we have ongoing check-ins where the entire senior leadership team are discussing social issues, our people, our culture, the business performance, are being really transparent and leading from the top with authenticity about embracing this hybrid working style. That was hugely important for fostering that excellence that we're looking for. Decisions were driven by the data. So when you look at our offices, when you look at our working practices, we look at the data. So what do people want to do? What are the data points about how they're using the various spaces? How can you bring them together to ensure people feeling safe and supported? So listening is the most critical thing across our learnings. And the role of leaders and teams. So leaders kind of model the values that we want the company to exhibit. And therefore, they need to not only do it themselves, but we've enabled them with additional kind of training, additional softer skills to help manage kind of employee engagement when you're managing a team which is more dispersed, which when you're managing teams where they're not about a 9 to 5, where they're about leading to outcomes. So these are the kind of 4 key buckets that even though we're already very mature in this, they're also additional things we learned on top. And then we start putting them together to start defining what the future looks like. But the executives need to feel that they need to be open to listening to the workers. Otherwise, you will get this great resignation, what we're seeing. So as we look at kind of how we're going to do this moving forwards, where we've made changes we've kind of broken down silos, things very drastic. A better way of phrasing it is we've made these 3 teams work more closely together to collectively define our future work strategy. So obviously the technology team is IT. Workplace resources is our facilities team, and people and communities is what we call HR. So all 3 of them have an equal seat at the table, and based on a kind of a mass employee survey, they've authored a white paper based on what are the needs of the employees, what are their hopes, what are their aspirations, what does that mean from a tech perspective, what does that mean from a person perspective, what does that mean about our office space, and how can we bring all those elements together to totally re-envisage the future and kind of go to the next level. Which led to kind of 3 buckets of thinking how we crafted this. So the first one is, what is a masterful hybrid experience? So step 1 here is the acceptance that even if it may feel uncomfortable, you're going to be working in a hybrid fashion. And by embracing that, you can then allow it to be a proactive thing where you're looking to drive positive change and how you can double down on those experiences to take them to the next level, to ensure people can really be innovative, to ensure they feel empowered, to ensure they're feeling productive. When we're done with obviously the work style preferences, so we said employees can choose where they work, how they work, and when they're going to work. But you need to kind of take that on board to look at, okay, so what do we need? How do we take that into account in the design of our workplaces? And I'll show you some of the new designs we've done in a moment, and the technology and the packs we make available to different people based on their personas and based on the needs of their particular role. And then a really big one is inclusive connections. So we've embraced everyone's going to be hybrid anyway. So we're going to double down on them being hybrid. How can you use that for a greater advantage? Well, clearly that's if you can make hybrid even more inclusive, if you can break down even more of the broken processes from the past, that gives you an advantageous position. And in simple scenarios, that relates to you can broaden your geographic scope of recruitment. You don't need people that need to be in a commutable distance to a particular office. But also, you can also do things within the technology which make the conversations more equal, more inclusive for the people on those calls. So if people are generally being dominated where somebody is particularly loud, I think we can all think of people like that when we've been in a meeting. So how can you allow them to share their opinions even if they can't get a word in edgeway? there's things we can do around gesture recognition, or round robin time is built into the meeting platforms where everyone gets a particular amount of time, and the real time ideation and whiteboarding, so you can really bring together the best of different views. And then that extends to the needs and the regulations around people with disabilities, people that may be at high risk, that they may be a great person for the organisation, but because they're worried about they may have weak immune systems and so forth, you can still bring them into the experience. So really looking at that greater level of inclusivity, and where there are friction points, being open-minded about doing that. I've put in some of the kind of questions we pose to the teams that you may want to look at. You may want to look at with your own teams to see whether, if you haven't done these things, they may help you craft the future for your organisations. So I've spoken a lot about the employee consultation. That's a kind of no-brainer. How we're being proactive, a proactive hybrid work policy. So this is going to happen. Let's make it really successful rather than fighting it. This concept of outcomes is critical to that, but even if you're making a statement that you are going to embrace way of working, it has to be authentic. So there's no point in saying we're going to support hybrid work, then senior leaders turn up at the office 8 to 8, 5 days a week, wearing a three-piece suit, and then people feel they've been chastised or left out of the loop because they're trying to embrace this hybrid work that the company's told them they can do. But then if there's senior people that are not embracing it, then, well, clearly that's disingenuous. And again, it's going to lead to lack of empathy and frustrations by the workforce. And one of the things really important, and quite often people kind of would hold their hand up and say, we have to go into an office, we're worried about our culture. And sorry if it's deliberately sound like a petulant child in that, but I hear it all the time. And culture is clearly hugely important. But culture is not driven by presenteeism. Culture is about your rituals, your norms, your interactions, and the empathy you create within a team. And our culture hasn't suffered by being dispersed. And of course, we want to get together and meet our teams. We're actually going to an event in person in the first week of October. And then obviously we're going to go out for dinner afterwards as a team because we want to spend time together. But culture isn't driven by going into an office day in, day out. There are other ways you can fuel that.
Mark, might I just jump in on the previous slide, because that's kind of a topic we've been hearing a lot from our community, and that's why we also used it for this session when we were writing about it. I think the consulting the employees is not necessarily a no-brainer, right? Because a lot of senior leaders are afraid that they then have to scale up individual needs and just say yes to every wish and every need that the employees let them know. So how did you tackle that? How do you consolidate? There's probably as many opinions as you have employees. How do you narrow it down into a system that then works on an individual and or team level?
So my internet went a bit patchy there, Isabel, so I didn't actually hear that very well, but I think that was local to me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, so let me just quickly reiterate. What we hear a lot from our community is senior leaders being afraid to have to answer to all the needs and individual aspects when they ask their employees how they want to work going forward. So how did you guys tackle this consolidation of like almost 80,000 individual viewpoints?
So these are actually guitar, because this is actually the next slide. So when we spoke to the managers, we wanted to post some questions about our work style norms. So think about the meetings we have, kind of what portion of our days are active meetings. Do we have the right resources and rituals for the synchronous and the asynchronous work? Are leaders willing to adjust their preferences to align to their teams? Now, I think this one's interesting because I feel, at least my experience, is that quite often when people say they're not getting support around this kind of hybrid work culture, people assume that it's the manager that's the person that doesn't want to work in that way. But equally, it could be the team that doesn't want to work in that way. And that's totally okay as well. So it could be you've got a manager that wants to stay at home 5 days a week and a team that wants to be in the office 5 days a week. Well, clearly that's not going to work, and vice versa. So that consultation, that finding the kind of right middle ground and that natural rhythm for a team collectively is hugely important. And what is the trust you place in your employees to effectively balance their well-being and their work performance? So obviously moving forwards, when you're working in this way, when you're doing your interviews and things, you're going to need to get a handle on this element, which is actually probably less of a priority in the past when people would all be in the same space. So then you could kind of start mapping out the needs of the work to the needs of the individual preferences, kind of on a graph on the right-hand side, and find a common ground between the two. And that's really going to be your sweet spot. And every organization will really need their own flavor of hybrid work. Every organization is different. All because we work in this particular way doesn't mean everyone else is going to work in this particular way. But there are lots, we've been successful working in this way. So that's why we highlight some of these things that people can take a piece of, put their own flavor on it, and have their best possible experience. Does that answer your question as well?
Yeah, for now, for sure. I'm happy to hear from the others later in the Q&A, but I really wanted you to make that point because that's what we hear a lot. It's like this fear around scaling individual viewpoints.
Cool. So this is kind of what we call next gen world now. So we're speaking about employee preferences a lot, but that has to be balanced with a business need, and you have to have the right technology to do that. So we've accepted this is the way it is, and we're going to develop the new rituals and empower the teams accordingly to make it successful. There are some amazing experiences of when people have been at home, but there are also things people yearn for from when they used to go into an office more often. So obviously they need to be brought together. That is how you find your own flavour of hybrid work for you organisationally. And from a technology perspective, it's that how can we make the technology more inclusive? Are there gaps which are there today which we can break down to bring on that greater well-being, to bring more people into working in this way? And these are all the elements which come together. So kind of typical today, this is a hybrid workflow to give you some kind of real life examples, and I'll talk a bit about kind of what we would talk about at home, how you can make that sustainable and a workplace re-entry, is this kind of more varied flow. So I would do all my focused work at home. I'd only go to the office really for having lunch with people. If I'm quite often, depending on the event I'm presenting at, there may be things I need in the office which I don't have at home. And then obviously I get ready to travel in. Everything goes via our single app. So all our tools from calling, meetings, messaging files, the whole shebang goes via WebEx. So if someone phones me and I'm at home, it rings on my endpoint, which I'm on now. If someone but it also phones my mobile phone. So when I'm out and about, I'm not in contact. I'm not non-contactable. If people need to speak to me, then I can be productive on the go. When we talk about intelligent workplace interactions, here we're talking about, okay, so what visibility can I have into from afar? The availability of the office. What is the density? Are there going to be desks available? Am I going to go to a floor where all the rooms are ad hoc, or they all need to be scheduled, and what rules are in place around that? So I can intelligently get real-time insights into what's happening in the office. And it could be before I even leave the house, the office is at full capacity based on whatever the restrictions are at that point or time or that particular office. So clearly I just wouldn't leave the house in that scenario. I'd just stay at home and not waste a journey. The arrival experience to finding the different sites you're going to be working in. You no longer will have a desk. So what does your personal desk, what does a modern intelligent hot desk look like? And we're going to talk about that in a moment. The rules made around automations and reservations. So how many of the rooms and desks do you make bookable? When I just automatically walk into a room, even if I haven't already booked it, it just automatically books it for me because it knows who I am. I'll get a prompt. Mark, do you want to book the room? Yes, for 1 hour, and it just does it for me. Then if I leave after 45 minutes, it just automatically unbooks the room, so we can get that maximum optimization of the office. And that's the kind of flow. Then obviously we have data points across all of this, which we use to refine the process, that we use to trial and error, that we use to help make sure we're optimizing our spend on the experiences, both for when people are at home and in the office. So when it comes to an at-home experience, this is my team's home offices. I asked them to take a photo of it, and they sent them across to me a couple of days ago. So there's two consistent elements I'd call out here. So clearly everyone has different shapes and sizes of offices. We have project managers here, we have directors, we have people on the financial side of the team, and we have represented Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, Madrid, Milan, Hook, Surrey Hills, and somewhere else in the countryside. So the two consistent things: one, I think some of my team clearly tidied their offices before taking these photos, and the second one being that every single person has a dedicated video device on a desk, but different dedicated video devices based on what's available to them. So the reason that is important, two things. So when we had the earlier question about what would make you interact less in real time, people spoke about meeting fatigue. People talk about kind of the mind-numbing repetition. So what would commonly happen, or the experience that many people had, and my actual laptop's over there, but they spent their days like this on video calls. So clearly that's a poor experience. It's uncomfortable, you get strain in your neck, and there's a reason why when you go into an office, facilities come to see you and say, here's your desk, here's how high it needs to be, this is your screen, here's your footrest, here's your chair, because it has a meaningful impact on how people feel and the kind of burnout and things such as that. By having a dedicated video device, you're not hunched over a laptop, you have that more immersive experience, you can stand up, you can sit down, and so forth. So even though there are different roles on this video, on these images, everyone still has that need for rich video, and we scale this based on how collaborative people are. So you see two interactive whiteboards here, bottom middle, the one with the bike. So that relates to Stuart and my role, that we need access to an interactive whiteboard. But when you look at Sylvia's office, which is bottom right, she doesn't even have a chair. She sits on a social ball. But she has different access to video than we do, because her focus is more kind of financial. So she's in some respects less collaborative in what she does compared to Stuart, myself, and some of the other members of the team. So it's different people need a different package, for want of a better phrase, but the consistency is a proper video experience, which avoids that fatigue, avoids that. And I know what people mean when they say I've been on meetings all day long. If you're on your laptop on meetings all day long, it's soul destroying. Okay, so now we're going to talk a bit about offices. So if I was in a room, I'd ask for you to raise your hands about, have you ever worked in an office that looks like this? You can actually do it via the gestures on WebEx. So for many, this would potentially look like their office experience. If you walk through the city of London, this is what you see through the windows. This is not a Cisco office. Let's make that very, very clear. This is a Cisco office. And I'm using this particular image because this was the first office we reopened post-COVID, and this is our office in Sydney. You can tell very different environment from the minute you look at it. The whiteboard in the entry hall is your map and your wayfinding for finding where you're going to around the office, because it's a big office. So in a pre-COVID world, the office actually looked like this. Lots of meeting spaces, very big, different shapes and sizes of rooms, some with video enabled, some with desks, some with this, some with that. But still a pretty good office, to be fair. Where we are now, and we're working through this with many of our offices, they haven't all been done yet because we've got lots of them, is we have actually optimized our floor space. So we totally reimagined it. So a couple of things to call out here, and there's 3 categories of how we've reimagined it. For obvious reasons, the employees' views on health and safety practices are higher than they've ever been in the past. So across all the workplaces, we have real-time people monitoring and density. And there are different rules based on different countries and where we are in the pandemic at different stages. We have stage 0, 1, 2, 3, which is our workplace reopening. UK at the moment is in stage 2. So our offices can be at 50% capacity. Stage 3 is business as usual. Some of the offices in the APJ are at that. 0 is just critical people to run the infrastructure. And stage 1, I think it's 20% or less in the office. So that's why the density is important. And in real time, as hopefully there isn't many more, but as there are other variants, you can dial that up and down automatically like that without needing to change your offices, but still getting the work done there. Obviously, we look at the movement. Are people having unnecessarily unwanted interactions, which could cause problems? heightened automated cleaning workflows. So someone's been in a room, had a meeting. When the meeting finishes, there's an automated trigger that goes to the cleaning team that comes and cleans that office. The signage in that meeting space changes to say last clean 20 minutes ago. So the next person in can feel confident that they're in a safe place to motivate them back in. And something we've actually had for a long time, but it's just increasingly important now, is contactless collaboration when you're in the spaces. So you don't actually need to touch anything that's not your own. You dock into the hot desk using your headset. The meeting experience, you can just use voice controls, your phone, your laptop, your tablet. So you don't need to touch anything, but you can still get that kind of big room experience. Obviously, we talked a lot about we're talking about technology here today. Every single meeting space has video in, every single one. The reason for that, I think everyone would have seen research from Gartner that 98% of meetings moving forwards would have a remote participant. So clearly, then for them to be an inclusive experience, you need to kind of equalize regardless of where people are. So that's where video comes in. And there's some cool stuff we're doing regarding a hot desk. So I'll give you a taste of that in a moment. And a little bit about kind of the workplace redesign. So the kind of process. So there were personal offices in the past. They've all become huddle spaces. They are no longer individual people's offices because you need more collaboration spaces than ever before. Depending on what stage of the reopening we're at, because of the density rules, those could become jump rooms, so optimized for one, and we can quickly dial that back up to full capacity as and when required. Less desks, more collaboration spaces, and more open collaboration spaces. And I'll show you an image momentarily about that. Because what we've seen from the data about when we are reopening the office is people aren't really going into the office anymore for formal reasons. They're only getting in there for the informal social connection. So they're not going to be working at a desk. They're only at a hot desk when they've got nobody else to talk to. They'll be there in one of the collaboration spaces. They'll be in the Grand Community Lounge, which I'll show you in a moment. They'll be there socialising and doing group work rather than sitting down at a desk by themselves. So those are kind of some of the changes that we've done. And then this is where people actually spend most of their time. The Grand Community Lounge. We've got these in 7 offices now, and they're kind of more and more of them are having them now. So as you can see, it's kind of a fusion between like a WeWork and a business class lounge at the airport. You can work here, they've got access to video, but realistically, it's just your place where you connect and kind of have your kind of cultural dialogues. Is that a question? No problem. I think someone's just on mute. Cool. Yeah, so that's the big spaces. And then we have kind of hot desking. So as I said, no one's going to have a dedicated desk in our offices anymore. So what is a modern, intelligent hot desking experience? And there's really 5 things I would call out here. So obviously you're going to be in an open plan environment. So the needs of audio privacy, if you are in a call at the desk, it's hugely important. So centrally managed enterprise grade headsets that can be troubleshooted, provisioned, and so forth across 80,000 people. And you need these because when you're in the office, you use them. When you're on the go, you use them. And depending on your environment at home, you might need this at home. You could have a shared home office. You could have young children running around screaming their heads off. We're a bit early in the day for it, but the bathroom's in the room behind me. So if we are on this call at 4 o'clock, it's fair to say it gets a bit raucous. Some of it may overflow into this room. Then we have the need to be on visibility. You need, as I said, we're breaking down those barriers. Everyone needs a consistent experience. There will be remote participants, or you're the remote participant because you're the only one in the office and everyone else is at home. So you need to break down that barrier. The integrations is that everything's driven by the software. So every element of our work life is via the app on our phone. You dock it onto the hub, which you see on where the phone sat in the picture, and that sets up that entire desk environment to you as an individual. When you take your phone away, it sets it up. It kind of resets for the next person. And these 3 elements make up almost like your toolkit to office well-being. Everyone's different shapes and sizes. Everyone has a phone, so you can bring your experience there, but it can allow you to have this kind of flexible screen height, all the other bits and bobs, give you the best possible experience in a way that you can put on every single desk. Because being truly honest, the device I'm using now, you wouldn't put in every single desk in your office because clearly it just costs too much. But for the execs or people with very high collaborative roles, you would. But what I'm showing here is, for want of a better word, the vanilla desk that would apply to every single person in an organization. And the hub is the intelligent sensors for the desk. So this is how you book the desk. This is all your environmental sensors, which become triggers into your smart building strategies, which is another big dialogue. But we're seeing smart buildings come together with hybrid work, future work really closely. And we've been in some really interesting dialogues where some of the bigger property owners are trying to blend these two things together. So I think there'd be some really funky stuff happening there. Those of you that live in London, if you know 22 Bishopsgate, which is the tallest building in the city of London, that's Cisco smart buildings end to end, and they've literally pushed the barrier as far out of smart buildings as it can go. So there's some really cool stuff there, and there's probably articles online that you can read about that. So I have another poll for you. If you could create your perfect future workplace, what would it look like? And if any of you say the Cisco workplace, I can point you to our job recruitment pages. Human-centric, inclusive, yes, 100%. Environmentally friendly, that is a topic I'm very pro. And there's some really interesting things where some of the big multinationals have been speaking to us about how can we help them achieve their CO2 targets. And that blend of smart buildings, future work, the sensing technology that's in all the devices really flows into that. And some of the hard savings tied to that are incredible. That's is good. So I think you'd like the Grand Community Lounges. The new office in Chicago is really funky. So as you walk along, basically because there's video everywhere, you have every bit of wall where you could have a desk or beanbags opposite has an interactive whiteboard on. So you could be relaxing on the beanbag, brainstorming, ideating, and just going through your process from there.
Maybe Mark,
Exercise,
this is a good jumping in point for me, because we had a great question in the Q&A section. So does the success of a hybrid working environment depend on the type of work and or business, is Susanna's question, because she feels like maybe for knowledge workers it can be just easily adopted, but for other types of jobs it could be more difficult. So does it cause like a cultural divide within the company, or almost a socio-economic divide if you scale it up to the society as a whole?
I think it's a really good question. And there's kind of two answers to that. So, and I'm going to, for want of a better phrase, I'm going to separate knowledge workers from frontline workers. So as an example of that, it could be a nurse, a doctor, be a kind of frontline worker, also a knowledge worker, or equally, it could be an engineer if they're working on an oil rig, or whatever it may be. But people that aren't traditionally, for want of a better phrase, desk bound, wherever that desk may be. So they actually are also 100% part of this hybrid work experience, and there's things that have to be taken into account. So in the past, it may have been you'd have the frontline worker A, and they may have four experts with them, so they could be fiddling with the pump on an oil rig, and they have four other people around them helping them define what the problem is. Oh, that looks like an issue. There's risk there. There might be a health and safety person watching what they're doing to make sure they don't break any rules, whatever it may be. So today, though, realistically, you're not going to have those four shadows stood behind them. So how do you allow them to be just as effective? And there's some really cool stuff. So we work with a company called RealWear, where they have the wearable technologies which are exploding in that kind of more frontline industrial space. And their wearables integrate directly into WebEx. So they could be, say I'm the expert at home, I'd see a real-time video feed, what they can see. I can ideate, iterate over the real-time video, which they can see, then work through the project in real time with them, even though I'm not physically stood behind them. I mean, that's just one example. But kind of think quite a good one, that it's not just about the people who are additionally desk bound, the people that are out and about. That's why the need to be allow people to do their entire jobs from any location becomes so important. So we talk about making it sustainable, is the word we often use. And that comes down to that single experience, which has all your collaboration tools in one place. But in our case, it's about being bi-directional. So you could take our collaboration experience and put it in the other line of business tools that these people may be using, or you can take their line of business tools and put it into the collaboration experience to make that the kind of UI. We don't mind either way, which is different compared to some other solutions out there, but it's just about optimizing it. And obviously from a process side of things, you may have people that feel a bit aggrieved that they're in the office every day and other people are not, but that there is an element of it comes down to the nature of the role. So we did some persona mapping, and for 3 simple buckets we'd called concentrators, collaborators, and for mine's gone blank, and a bigger one. So concentrators are people where the bulk of the work is solo in nature. Collaborators are 40% or less of their time is collaboration, and then 40% and above. And then you map that against their personal work styles or their preferences to home, office, hybrid. And that gives you a kind of matrix of different tools and different things you need to try and break down to equalize everyone's experience. But yes, people will have different experiences, and they should have different experiences. Different roles have different needs. One which I find quite frustrating is contact centers. So, as an associated partner in the business to RISE, we have a cloud contact center platform. And I've been having some problems with my broadband. And I find it infuriating that when I phone them up, they're like, I'm sorry, we haven't got as many agents available as normal. You're going to have to wait. It's unacceptable. You should have just as many agents speaking to me, because they could be at home speaking to me. You've just got the wrong technology. So I think, and we come onto some kind of questions at the moment to help equalize it, but that consultation, some realization that every role's different. So you're going to have a different balance. But when the frontline people 100% part of this experience as well. I like so I've just seen the outdoors or connected to come up as well. I'm a big fan of that one. I didn't actually include it in the photo, but we had all hands, and my colleague Vaughan Klein that runs Europe, his family rented a house in France for a month because his children on school holidays. He's got 4 children. They needed some space, and he's had his video endpoint in the garden of the chateau, and he worked from there for 3 weeks. So he was actually only off for one of the 4 weeks when they were in France, but he was still working from different locations. Cool. Some really cool points there. So does that cover off your question, Isabel?
Yeah, I picked up Susanna's question. So Susanna, if you have any more follow-ups, then that's your chance to chime in. Looking at the time, also we have another question from Layla. But maybe Mark, I know I think you have like 2-3 more that you want to share.
Yeah.
And maybe
cool. So it's Susanna. So thank you very much for posing my question. I really appreciate it. I think what my biggest concern is that there are knowledge workers, and this works very well for them. But for those people who, as you say, cannot be working from a desk, or perhaps have much more of a, laborious type of point of view when it comes to work, I think it could potentially cause a divide where everyone has the choice if they're a knowledge worker, but if they're not a knowledge worker, if they're more, labor focused, then maybe it's going to cause a social or economic divide. I'm not sure, but I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the data will tell, obviously, and this is why it's about the ongoing learning. So, and I think, and that's why I kind of said there needs to be an element of realization. Different roles will allow you to do different things. And some people might prefer not working in this way, and they quite like the more kind of laborious roles. But yeah, I mean, I think you always get, I think even in the old days, have and have nots, who's got the corner office, who's got the better view, who's on a better floor, all those kind of things. So I think this is nature, be human nature, but I think the HR, there are things via that consultation, via the listening, via how you do your workplace policies that can help mitigate it. But I think it's a really good question, Susanna, and I think obviously we track the data continually, and maybe we can have a follow up to this session in, I don't know, 12 months' time, and we can go through the data and see any other intricacies which we've managed to pop up. So wrapping up, then we can take any other questions. So from the hard benefit perspective, so the business case for hybrid working. So we've been tracking against these statistics ever since we started working in this way. We've seen massive real estate optimization. We sold over 200 buildings over the last kind of few years. We've seen a massive reduction in our travel spend, and this isn't enforced by COVID. This is a pre-COVID reduction in travel spend. We split what we call optimal and suboptimal travel. Optimal travel is travel which drives revenue for the business, customer facing. Suboptimal is internal travel, where the policies being that your internal only travel, where possible, will not happen and be done by video. And then we allow people to do that in an inclusive way, but obviously we still do the business travel for the customers and so forth. We've seen the productivity go up. We've seen our employee turnover go down, and obviously the highlight from that is the great place to work. And we've seen that organizational agility. So when everyone was sent home 18 months ago, there wasn't really any real pain for us. Obviously, there are a few people that would normally go to the office 9 to 5, but everyone worked off a laptop. Some of the engineering teams, we had to obviously quickly define a policy for, well, you're still going to go into the office, so how do we keep you safe? So they had a couple of days where that was fleshed out. But really, it's allowed us to respond. And I think being named the world's best supply chain, I think is an example of that as well by Gartner, that there's this massive shock impacting all types of manufacturers at the moment. And yes, it's impacting us, but the way Gartner ranked it, we're really executing there really strongly. From a continuity perspective, I'm not going to read through these again, but these are just the 10 things I called out early on about it can be hugely successful. It's not an inhibitor. You can fully embrace it and drive incredible things. But I also understand that my experience may be very, very mature compared to the experience some people on this call have today. And hopefully you'll get to an experience akin to what I have. But there are really 4 kind of practical things I'd probably call out. So when everyone got sent home, they pretty much grabbed any technology they could do, but we're really seeing a ratification where people are reevaluating their technology choices. Are we using the right tools? Does it meet all the security requirements? Does it allow us to work as effectively with people externally as it can do internally? And does it allow us to do every part of our job? It's not just about your ability to do a meeting. You have to do every facet of your job in a hybrid fashion to hit the maximum outcomes. Second one is how you make remote and hybrid work sustainable. So this is around mass video, but not about video on laptops. We're talking about dedicated video devices, which allow you to, if you have got days where you're on calls day in, day out, it's more engaging, it's less tiresome. And I think that'll help with some of the things which you called out early on about people's this kind of meeting fatigue. Yes, you're tired at the end of the day, but I'm being really honest, I've never really I don't really feel that in the setup we have now compared to when I first worked in a hybrid fashion 10 years ago and hated it. Intelligent adaptations to your office space. You don't need to rip and replace your office space and put up plastic shields everywhere. It's about using intelligence and the sensors in the technology to dynamically manage that space. And a lot of these sensors are in the technology you're going to have to use anyway, be it your access points, be it the video endpoints. So it's not a duplication of spend. You're actually ripping out spend, and it's a really efficient way of doing it. And for your IT colleagues or anyone on the call that's in IT, you may hear these kind of narratives and think, how am I going to manage 80,000 home offices and 270 real offices and everybody when they're in between? So that's really about the management portal of all these experiences. So everything I've highlighted here is managed via one place, the WebEx Control Hub, the headsets, the hubs, the meeting rooms, the video endpoints, the software, the provisioning, the security rules, all in one place, which is why we could scale from 270 offices to 80,000 home offices instantaneously. So kind of what I'd call out, this is kind of food for thought as we close. So as I said, everyone's going to have their own flavour of what I've spoken about today. So I suppose my rhetorical question I'd pose to you would think about your particular role, think about what you'd like to do, and think about the desired outcome you're trying to strive for. I would bet 100% this can be done. If you take a clean up view to what you've done, park any habitual things or shackles you may have come across from colleagues or just culture, taking a new view about using this as an opportunity to re-envisage your processes, what's broken, where can we make it better, and work. We can obviously help you with that, but equally Shaker Academy can kind of help consult you and take you into a deeper level discussion, do your definitions, and there's loads of content here that can help. And my last slide, on the more tech side, because I haven't really spoken about the tech deliberately today, we have an annual event called WebEx One that's at the end of October. And that's all about new launches, products, features, innovation across the breadth of hybrid work, future work, and what we've spoken about here. It's free to attend. You can just go to webx1.com, and all the things I've touched on, you can go many levels below that, and you'll be able to cover that off there. So back to you, Isabel, for any other questions or anything you'd like to add.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark, for the insights. What I like so much when talking to you guys at Cisco is this mindset of continuous learning. And Leila had a question that she posed in the chat that was about, often it's the case that subject matter experts have to then facilitate sessions that are hybrid. So neither physical in the office nor really only virtual like they were during Corona. This poses like another level of complexity. Did you do like these sort of upskilling workshops for your people, or how did you address that maybe not everybody was as used to also using the skills and the tools that you have?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. So obviously we did the training from afar. So and you guys will see it from the UI you're in now. There's breakout rooms within WebEx. So you can train multiple groups on wider topics and break them out into smaller breakouts based on their particular needs. So that's one thing. I suppose the continual reinforcement and enablement is another. Our technical teams are very proactive, and we have various internet portals that help you. Because we're obviously quite a large company, we do have lots of these processes already set up. But I suppose what I'd call out as the biggest investment in time into this was we had something that was called Teams Week, where basically we had everyone in the company, 80,000 people, had a week of training collectively about future work, empathy, social issues, inclusivity, working this way, the expectations, the values, where you can go to get assistance. And we've been very proactive around that. And actually, as it turned out, based on the feedback from the staff, they've actually took that, what was a single Teams week, and they've actually repeated several sessions where there's people want to see them again. And now there's an ongoing Teams week that's like a never-ending week, but like every 2 weeks there's more content, new. But a lot of people came in from the outside to deliver the content, so really kind of third-party leaders. And the other thing I'd call out as well is, I mentioned these kind of check-ins with the senior leadership team. We had like medical professionals, some of like the leading medical professionals in America were on those calls, talking about mental, physical well-being, talking about what's going on, talking about some of the myths prior to the vaccinations, talking about what's happening in different parts of the world, and really being really open and transparent. And I think there was probably some hard discussions. There were probably some viewpoints, because you think about some of the other social things that have happened in the last year in America. There's some topical debates without elaborating, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So obviously that had to be addressed within this hybrid world as well. So again, this authenticity leading from the top, and that's the consistent dialogue, I think is so important. And that's, I suppose, from a personal perspective, where if I ever need to leave Cisco, I'm going to really struggle, because I'm not going to be able to work in any other way. I have now expectations about transparency and having a voice. And I generally do feel we're very lucky that we have the best technology anyway. But you still need to use it. We are customer zero for hybrid work. So we've done lots to make it a thing, and that just continues and continues.
Thanks so much for diving deeper into that one, Mark. So looking at the time, we are never punctual. Everybody knows it. It's a shaker thing. Stuff is too interesting. So I just want to close by maybe highlighting again the 3 messages I'm taking from this session with you, Mark, is continuously talk to your people, always look at your processes, and provide the technological backbone to shape the next generation workplace. And with that, I want to close. Thank you again, Mark, for being here. Thanks everyone else for tuning in today. Good discussion also in the chat, and we hope to see you in November for our next Tech Talk, which will be a very different format, but you'll be informed about that in due time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.